I started by outlining the sketches of Ace and Storm so that the pencil sketch wouldn't dissolve into the paint. I used thinned out burnt umber for this task. For this painting, I would work on the surrounding first before getting into the details of the dogs. I started working on the big tree trunk in the background. I first outlined the shading and highlights of the tree trunk. For shading, I mixed burnt umber and ultramarine blue. I created texture on the shaded areas of the tree trunks by adding random vertical shades to represent tree bark. For the highlighting areas of the tree trunk, I used a color mix of burnt umber, ultramarine blue, white, raw sienna, and burnt sienna. I added some light gray to the highlight areas of the tree trunk to mimic the appearance of the tree bark. Here, I added some burnt sienna and raw sienna to the highlighted areas of the tree trunk to give it a bit more texture. I used warm white thinned out with paint thinner to paint patches on the top right corner of the canvas to mimic sunlight. I roughly marked out another tree trunk and some branches in the background. They don't need to be specific as they will be out of focus and in the background. I roughly painted some cool green, lighter shades of green and highlight green to represent a canopy in the top right corner of the canvas. I mixed ultramarine blue, white, and manganese blue hue to paint patches of the blue sky peeking through the canopy on the left side of the canvas. Again, I roughly marked out some tree trunks in the background using a mix of burnt umber and ultramarine blue. I felt like I needed to apply the first coat to the ground so that by the time it dried, I could add some details on top. I mixed phthalo green and sap green with alizarin crimson permanent to create a cool shadow shade of green for the canopy on the left. I then added a mixture of phthalo green and sap green as the base color. There was a lot of space to cover with paint on the left side of the canvas, so it took me quite a while to fill it in. For the highlights of the canopy, I added cadmium green on top. I painted some pine trees in the foreground, adding a bit more detail since they appear closer to the viewer. Now that the paint on the bottom left has dried, I wanted to create some foliage on the ground. I used straight paint in raw umber, burnt sienna, and some burnt umber for the shaded area on the left. For the lit areas, I used raw sienna, yellow ochre, and a mixture of raw sienna and white. I like to use straight paint because it adds texture to the painting. Similarly, on the right, I used various hues, raw umber, burnt sienna, and a mix of raw umber and raw sienna to mimic the foliage and pine nuts scattered on the ground. I also added some medium gray to mimic twigs that have fallen on the ground. In the lit area, I applied the same techniques, but this time I used lighter hues such as yellow ochre, a mixture of raw sienna and white, and light gray. For the mattress the dog was lying on, I used a mixture of manganese violet, cadmium red light, and radiant violet. For the lit area of the mattress, I added more radiant violet mixed with white. For the mattress on the left, I used radiant violet, manganese violet, and a bit of raw umber. For the area where the sun hits the mattress, I used straight radiant violet. I used raw umber to create creases on the mattress where the dogs lay. Now that all the surrounding areas were finished, I started working on the dogs. I started the underpainting for Ace's face by adding medium gray to the face and raw sienna to the ear area. For the eye, I used straight raw sienna. I use a dagger brush to apply the second layer of paint to Ace's face and ears. Ace is a Goldendoodle, but surprisingly, the hair on his face and ears is quite straight or only slightly wavy. I use a dagger brush to apply warm white, light gray in between, and a bit of mixture of raw sienna and white for the face. I also used the same set of colors for the tail. Painting the tail was relatively easy because it has straight hair as well. For the underpainting of Ace's body, I used a mixture of raw umber and titanium buff thin with paint thinner. For the second coat of paint, I used warm white, titanium buff, and a little raw umber for contrast. I didn't like how Ace's body turned out because he's supposed to have curly hair, and I don't think I captured that well. While waiting for Ace's body to dry so I can fix it, I started working on Storm's face and body. I did some underpainting using paint thinner. Storm has creamy beige, yellowish colored fur. I used different colors like yellow ochre, burnt sienna mixed with white, warm white, and titanium buff to paint her fur. Since Storm has straight fur, I used a small round brush to paint her fur. It was relatively easier than painting Ace's curly fur. To repaint the body fur, I mixed raw sienna and white with oil for the new color underpainting. I added some curls to mimic his curly fur. For highlights, I added titanium buff and warm white on top. Don't forget to like and subscribe. To finish up on Storm's face and body, I added highlights and shading to enhance the details. Let's take a look at the finished painting. Thank you for watching.